Hey everyone, and welcome back to Concentration Check. This is our weekly broadcast about anything that is tabletop and Dungeons and Dragons related. I'm Wyatt, and this time I'm actually joined by a good friend of mine, Shay.
Hi, everyone.
Shay actually is the one who introduced me to D&D. He was the one that kind of molded me who I am today. And I apologize that Tony's not here with us. He's actually indisposed of at the moment. So I hope that Shay will actually, kind of pinch it for him. A couple of new things that we're working on. First of all, as you will notice on the channel name, Concentration Check is no more. We are going under the new name, which is PriorPlay. Now, that was just to deal with some confusion that we had with a couple of other channels, a couple of other streamers. The podcast itself will still stay Concentration Check. We're not going anywhere, nothing's changing, just us, ourselves, as our company is kind of evolving. And so I thank you all for your patience and hope you guys enjoy the show. Today, we're actually going into the concept of an evil campaign, pretty much, right?
Yep.
Now, you've ran a lot more evil campaigns than I have.
Yeah. Both as a DM and as a player, they're a really cool idea. Definitely a way to step outside the box and not be the good guy, the white knight.
Now, is that why you like evil campaigns, or like what about it just like attracts you to it?
Evil campaigns, they tend to be a little bit more freeing, a little bit better open world. Instead of a quest to save the day, you have the option of just whatever means, or by seizing any means, as long as the goal is accomplished.
Okay.
Everything else is fine.
I tend to run my campaigns a little bit more neutral because I like anti-heroes, which we'll get into later on in this cast. But I actually like running neutral campaigns because it does give me that freedom. But I also don't like making my characters assholes. But maybe you can enlighten me as the show goes on.
Sounds fair.
So I guess the first thing we're going to get into right now is what really qualifies an evil campaign.
So, evil campaigns. First thing, the DM needs to talk to you and let the players know that, hey, we're going to run a darker campaign or we're going to run an evil campaign, so that they can then tailor their characters around that.
Right.
And this way, they're going in there expecting to have some moral questionable acts being taken, being put in tough situations where maybe it's just firebomb the town and move on to the next one.
Like to look at it as kind of breaking up the monotony of the situation out of how many campaigns have gone on, how many characters have been the stoic knight that has, slain the dragon, rescued the princess. Now you're playing as the evil wizard that's hiding in the tower and pretty much just completely doing whatever it is you want.
Yeah.
I will agree that it's pretty much freedom in the sense of you're saying, hey guys, this is what we're doing. There's not really going to be much in the terms of railroading for you to do. There's not really a quest. You guys are here to kind of make it and kind of fall back on the whole, I guess, anonymity and pretty much just how they're going to run it. Complete ambiguity.
Yeah. Evil campaigns, they tend to be a little bit more like big picture, where instead of a quest line that's taken care of in 3-4 get-togethers, it's the entire story needs to be what's in goal or what's in focus, and then you let your characters or your players determine the path that they want to take.
Right.
It just it allows the players to add a little bit more to the story, in my opinion.
Now, here's a question for you. Which is a preference, and I guess which is more quote unquote narratively impressive? Which is is that starting out as an evil campaign or transitioning to an evil campaign?
Well, the transition to an evil campaign is really interesting. It's usually, in my history, it's been we failed a quest and things have gone terribly sideways, and now we're either just burning the world and we'll see what happens.
Right. I actually, in my campaign that I'm running currently, I had this dungeon crawl set up with this old god, right? A long forgotten god. And through a turn of events and pretty much just me improvising for a huge part of it, I had the characters eventually pledge themselves to this eldritch dark god. And I was looking at it and I thought to myself, like, oh my god, I have gone from a neutral campaign straight into an evil one, and I have no idea how to go about this now. Um, yeah, I don't think I've ever specifically started out saying, hey, we're going to run an evil campaign. Most of my campaigns just wind up being an evil campaign.
And that type of organic growth is really cool. When you have one idea in your head, and then your players just derail it,
Right.
and you're playing fast and loose, and it takes you to a lot of really cool places.
I mean, at that point, everything's just off the rails. You're hanging on by the seat of your pants, and you're just hoping that the world doesn't implode while they're on this quest to seek world domination.
Exactly. Or you're able to at least keep one step ahead of them so that they're still entertained through the entire process. But it's really cool when the players, where you as the DM are actually being entertained by the choices that your players make.
Now, I have a question. Do you think that there are certain types of people that genuinely excel in an evil campaign versus a normal campaign? Because I am of the distinction that if you are completely new to D&D, completely new to tabletop, you should not play an evil campaign. You should play the stereotypical, good guy, bad guy. I think that should how it be, because it's almost like training wheels. Almost, you are guided through. This is like your first few sessions. You're kind of understanding what it is to be, looking at a map or looking at a piece of paper, understanding your abilities. I think that is more, an evil campaign is more suited to a more experienced player versus a newer one.
I agree. The good guy, the white hat campaigns, there's usually a person that's in charge. You will follow their orders, and you're helping to take care of the newer players. Whereas the evil campaign, it's more open world, it's broader. There is one goal in mind, and you need your character or your players to have enough experience to go, this is how I'm going to get from point A to point B.
Right. Now, is there anything else in terms of like player base that kind of differentiates who kind of excels more?
Yeah. I would say the people that role play a little bit better, they tend to be better for evil campaigns, simply because you're having to put yourself into literally behind enemy lines most of the time. So you have to just focus on how not to get caught, and role playing is the best way to do that.
I like to think of an evil campaign, if you ever kind of watch the anime Overlord, where he kind of gets trapped. He gets trapped in some like MMO, right? Judging from your face, I'm going to assume you haven't seen it.
I have
But
not.
he plays this kind of evil guild leader, right? And in reality, he's just kind of like some meek, soft-spoken guy. But he gets trapped inside this game world, and everyone thinks of him as this all-knowing, like, evil person. And so he just ramps it up and, like, buys into the hype and just projects out these evil monologues while inside of his head he's just completely just shitting himself almost.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty funny.
So I guess we've kind of gone into that. What are, besides open world, besides the big plot, is there really any differences in how you run the NPCs in an evil campaign? Would you have less? Would you have more? Like, how would you do it? Would you just create fodder, or is there actually going to be someone else that they can talk to as well?
So for every D&D campaign, you're going to need a couple characters for exposition in order to tell you about the story, tell you about the history, and help remind the players that this is the world that they're in.
Right.
Now, for an evil campaign, you're going to have, in my experience, you need a little bit more of a generic template for NPCs, simply because you're not even sure if your guys are going to decide to go to town X. They might want to go to town Y, and you're going to have to take those templates, pretty much white out what doesn't make sense for them or for to be a person in town Y, and just try to translate that as fast as possible.
Right.
So I would say for evil campaigns, a little bit more generic NPC base. For good campaigns, you're definitely going to need a little bit more in depth because your characters will probably be interacting with them more.
So here is kind of my whole stance on it, as well as, new players probably shouldn't start out with an evil campaign. An evil campaign does not just mean mindless murder.
I mean, it can, but those sessions are really only, those type of campaigns are really only good for like 1 or 2 sessions.
Right.
Sure, you go into a town, you're just, screw it, let's go ahead and start raping and pillaging.
Right.
That's fine, but it gets boring very fast. If there's no grand scheme, master plot where you're going to become the new evil overlord, or you're trying to turn yourself into a dark god, then it just gets stale.
Right. And it's got to be stale for the DM as well, as I'm looking from behind the screen. If people are just killing everything they see, now I'm just getting more and more pissed and constantly writing up monsters to I am actively trying to kill them at this point. And that's not how I want to be. I don't want to be the DM to a hostile table. And I think for a lot of DMs out there who kind of think like, oh yeah, run an evil campaign, let's run an evil storyline, let's do that, that sounds good. And then your players are like, yes, I want to murder the barmaid. And that's the first thing they do as soon as you start. I mean, there are certain repercussions you can play into. You could have bounty hunters. You can make the concept of executions a thing, of jail a thing. You could have someone exposition them about like, hey, what you guys did, that was really fucked up. Why are you doing this way, or why are you doing it that way? You should be more nuanced in your interactions.
Yeah. So once as a player, we were going to do an evil campaign, right? My older brother was setting it up. I was with one of my friends and another one of my friends, and we were going to be the bad guys. So we needed a knife for a ritual. So we broke into a shop in order to steal the knife. Totally got sidetracked, went off on the rails, ended up murdering the whole family, set the building on fire, and forgot about the knife. So while we went into that expecting to be evil, because we were going to make sacrifices to a dark god, we ended up forgetting about the dark god and then just went on a murder spree. Completely by accident. And yet again, this one lasted only a couple sessions because it got stale. It got stale for us as players, and it got stale for my brother who was DMing it.
Now, have you ever been on a particular storyline, a particular session, and you kind of thought to yourself, like, wait a second, are we evil or are we just anti-heroes? And kind of, I think the distinction is, at what point do you draw the line of, hey, we just butchered an entire army single-handedly, but here, let me help this little old lady across the street, or let me get this girl her ball.
It depends on your goals. Evil is someone that's going to break into a house and steal 400 gold because they needed the 400 gold. Fuck those people. Right. Anti-heroes are going to say, it would be faster for me to just kill all these people so that they can't be turned into undead in order to in order to wipe out another town. So it kind of depends.
Right.
If the ends justify the means, then you're an anti-hero. But if you're doing it for self-gain or just because, hey, I want something shiny, you're going to be evil.
Do you think there's a different type of evil when you're necessarily starting with alignment versus lawful evil, chaotic evil, and neutral evil?
Well, to be honest, most of my campaigns, we don't use alignment unless we do something evil, and then we'll usually adjust the person's alignment, saying, just assuming everyone's like neutral good, but they do something really terrible. Now they're going to register as neutral evil for reasons like certain spells detect good and evil, things like that. Maybe you might ping for that, but you got to do some evil things. So I would say it's difficult to explain. I would not ever go into a campaign saying I'm going to be chaotic evil.
Okay, well, let me rephrase. Do you think there's different expectations on the character based on their alignment when they do something evil? If you're looking at characters A and B, and character A is lawful evil while character B is chaotic evil, are you expecting them and they're on the same situation? Are you expecting different outcomes based on if you are looking at their alignment, or if you're expecting how their character to act based on their alignment?
So yeah, if your players are really good role players and they take their alignment into consideration, there should be a little bit of a conversation between your two players if one is chaotic evil and one is lawful evil. As long as that is happening, it's a really interesting way, and to be honest, it's never come up yet, so I'm now kind of excited to see it happen, hopefully soon.
All right, well, let's skip forward a little bit. You got your evil campaign all set up. The players are loving it as they should, and the party has just finished butchering a town. What rewards would you think are appropriate to characters of an evil campaign? Are they necessarily going to be the same as you would award a neutral or good campaign? Or are they going to be a little bit different, more homebrewy, things with more spikes and skulls and hellfire? Or is it just going to be kind of the same?
So, your typical white hat campaign, you have quest lines and you defeat a foe. Usually a big bad, and you get something shiny and cool. In most evil campaigns, you're trying to accomplish something, so you really just get scraps. If you butcher a whole town of farmers, you're not going to find an eldritch hammer of +4 that's just going to obliterate anyone that comes and fights you. You're going to find a handful of gold, maybe, and a whole bunch of useless tools.
Shit.
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit more difficult to try to reward your players in an evil campaign if they don't have a dark patron. I would start them off with something like a sword that might get stronger the more blood it drinks, or a pitchfork that if you kill people with it, you get additional strength or something like that.
So in mine that I just ran, the first character that kind of pledged themselves to this dark god, I pretty much told him, and he is a eldritch archer.
Arcane archer.
Arcane archer. I pretty much told him that you receive these benefits right now, and they're really small. You just get an advantage to persuasion. You can read Abyssal, right? And I said, if you sacrifice people to me in quantities of 5, you will receive certain things, certain bonuses. And somehow he managed to sacrifice 5 people in that particular session, and I gave him an ability that was, his god gave him that ability that was you can pretty much cause the blood in someone's body to pretty much explode. Now you take damage because you are drawing your own blood to do it, and it was a lot of homebrew, but it was really fun. I think that, that is something that I worked with, and I actually went on and thought more, and I said, I have 4 people. I have an arcane archer, I have a wizard, I have a rogue, and I have a druid. I can do different benefits for each one versus giving the party as a whole one shiny thing. I can give every single individual something that are kind of shiny. So, for the arcane archer, the one who is truly devout, the one that role plays it the most, I can do different things, kind of turn him into like a blood mage or a blood archer. The whole thing with blood, because he's a blood god. There was certain things where it pierces through and it explodes in blood, or he can control people like a puppet from like was it Avatar: The Last Airbender, the blood bending thing.
Okay.
And then for the wizard initially joined because he wanted more forbidden knowledge. So in that case, more homebrew would come into effect, and instead of teaching him blood magic, I'm just teaching him long lost magic. So just kind of coming up with weird homebrew things like ancient elven magic or kind of giant magic or anything else that, kind of giving him these little things, but it's particular to his character. And I think that works a lot better.
Yeah, if you're personalizing a reward to someone for accomplishing tasks, whether a good campaign or an evil campaign, that's really cool. It makes you as a player feel like you've accomplished something and the DM is really paying attention to me. So yeah, I love that idea. And when things like that happen, it's really cool. You just got to make sure that you stay focused and maybe not so much of the hard numbers, like when you said increments of 5. What's to stop him from going into like an orphanage of a whole bunch of people asleep and just start slitting throats? Or a hospital and just...
How I had set it up is he has, there were certain parameters, like it's increments of 5. But it has to be done at a particular place. And there has to be a ritual that is conducted at a particular place. This place being an island, so that means he could get a boat and put a sign over it that says free adoptions, and get the orphans that way. But I see where you're coming from, but I also put steps in place that he's not just skipping through a village and just cutting people's heads off and say like, look here, I did a good job.
Yeah, giving them a place where they have to return to, definitely a good idea. You have to come back to this cave and string them up on the table and then whisper some words and stab them in the heart. I do like that idea. Right. If there's a ritual to the sacrifice, it's cool.
All right, so I think the last thing that we really need to talk about here is the end goal. Like, I think that on a normal campaign, it's, we're rescuing someone, or we're rising up a rebellion, or we're doing this, we're doing that. While a evil campaign, the end goal's kind of left ambiguous. It's more like, the characters are level 20 now, the book closes, you guys already know what else happens. They just rule everything. Is that kind of how things work, or is it more hardened than that?
Well, that is, I feel like there always needs to be a goal in mind for every campaign, good or evil. There always needs to be a goal in mind. If you give that goal to your characters, then sometimes that's all they'll need. Like, you're creating a god, or you're destroying a kingdom. You want vengeance against a town. As long as there is a goal, then that is really where I feel like a campaign should end, once they have accomplished that goal. Because otherwise it just kind of seems like you're grasping for straws, like a TV show that has gone on for too many seasons.
Right.
D&D can do the same thing. Why not have your players get a win and then say, all right, guys, what are we going to do next? What's our next campaign going to be? So I would have them come up with a solid goal, maybe in their character backstory, or maybe put them in a situation to where they can have access to that goal. But once the goal's accomplished, close the book, whether it's level 10, 20, or anything, or level 1 or 20, or anything in between.
Right. Close the book once you reach the goal. And as we reach the end of our podcast right now, we must close the book on this one as well. Shay, I'd like to thank you for joining me today.
It was a pleasure.
And I hope to see you back soon. For all of those of you who are at home, I hope you got something informative out of this podcast. Please follow us on all of our social media, which is Twitter, Reddit, Amino. And I hope you guys like this. I hope you share it. Always happy to have you guys subscribe. Keep those dice rolls high, folks, and have a good day.